And now, the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 5th. Well, here we are on the 5th day of the month, day 186 of the year. 2 tropical storms active. Elsa in the Caribbean passing north of Jamaica, and 7W, which has just been designated as a tropical storm by our analysis. It is expected that it passes in between Taiwan and the Philippines in the coming days. It's day 35 of Atlantic hurricane season in the Atlantic, and there is Elsa there. In between Jamaica and Cuba, it does pose a threat to Cuba as well as to Florida and the southeast in the coming days. 5 tropical storms have formed so far this year, along with 1 hurricane. It's day 51 of hurricane season for the Eastern Pacific, with nothing active and nothing in store for the next 5 days. So as of right now, we're going to be sitting with our ratio of 5 tropical storms and 2 hurricanes, at least for the time being. In the Western Pacific, we now have Tropical Storm 7W, which has been just designated in our analysis as a tropical storm, while there's also Invest 97W, which now has an 80% chance of development and could strike China, the Hainan Peninsula specifically, as well as Vietnam in the coming days. No storms are active in the North Indian Ocean, which is to be expected given the fact it is July. There really is nothing that comes up during this month, so really not a surprise to be seeing nothing here, and it is likely that trend continues over the next several weeks at the very least. Here it is in the Atlantic. You can see Elsa being a very confusing storm to track as it continues in the between areas of Jamaica and Cuba. Tropical storm watches go all the way up into central Florida at this point, and Cuba will be seeing some impact shortly. Southeast as well. In the Eastern Pacific, nothing going on here. There's very little in general. Most of that cloud activity is actually going on south of Hawaii, although of course it's the Central Pacific, so there's really nothing expected to happen here at all anytime soon. In the Western Pacific, you can really clearly see the 2 forces at play here, 97W on the left and 7W east of the Philippines. Both of these are land threats, with 7W going into China, as well as 97W that will be posing a threat to Vietnam as well. This is all in the next week, so those there should be monitoring the system closely if you're in any of these storms' path. North Indian Ocean, we're looking at really the average of what you would expect in July. Nothing special, and really nothing that needs to be discussed more than the usual fact of the monsoonal seasons and all. So nothing expected here. You can see Elsa here. Recon is going to be going into it shortly, but as of right now, it's remaining a tropical storm. Could intensify slightly more before it makes landfall in Cuba, and then we're looking at another landfall towards Florida in a few days after. So a lot more people and land is expected to be affected in the next coming days. In terms of sea surface temperatures, we're still looking at 27 to 28 degree sea surface temperatures as the average for the Eastern Pacific. Some areas of 29 to 30 looking up here near the Mexican coastline there. The Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean looking pretty warm, around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, as well as the main development region, which is seeing more areas warm above the 28 degrees Celsius threshold. Gulf Stream is looking pretty nice, and it will be interesting to see, as it looks like Elsa will be trying to come off the land areas after affecting the southeast. In the North Indian Ocean, we're still looking at those 28 to 29 degrees Celsius sea surface temps, while the Philippine Sea and parts of the South China Sea experience sea surface temperatures 30 degrees or slightly higher. So really good conditions there. It's just whether the environmental conditions are good enough to support that. And of course, the southern hemisphere is in winter mode, so really nothing that would be supportive for cyclone development there. So it is, after all, the off-season here. Well, looking at our sea surface temperature anomalies, we're still looking at that cold wave for the Pacific there, all the way from the Californias south of Hawaii. We also have those warm subtropics that haven't been as warm as they used to be, so I guess that's, if any, a good sign in terms of that aspect. Although we're still looking at very warm sea surface temperatures for normal in the main development region. On this day in 2016, we had Hurricane Blas, which was a Category 3, would later make a Category 4 peak in the Eastern Pacific. And the first typhoon of the season in the Western Pacific, Typhoon Nepartak, which would end up becoming a Category 5 the next day. This is powered by Cyclone History. You can follow them on our Twitter that is located at the bottom of your screen. But yeah, a very busy, active day in 2016 where two majors were active on both sides of the world. Well, that brings us to the final segment of this Tropical Weather Bulletin. The next name for the Atlantic is Fred, followed by Grace. In the Eastern Pacific, the next name is Felicia, followed by Guillermo. And in the Central Pacific, knock knock, who's there? Not Hone. Hone remains the next name on the Central Pacific list. In the Western Pacific, it looks like we'll be getting these next two names shortly, but the next two names there are Infa, followed by Sampaka. In the North Indian Ocean, we are looking out for Gulab, followed by Shaheen. Switching it over to the Southern Hemisphere, the Southwest Indian Ocean specifically, the next two names there are Anna, followed by Batsire. In the Australian region, we're looking out for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, it's Cody. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow.